Hi, it's Bonner again. This is a part of my continuing series about what are different ways that we can become more familiar with note layout on the neck so that we easily know where the notes are that we're looking for. One of the tools that we already possess that allows us to see where the notes are on our instrument is the chords. By paying attention to what we're playing when we're practicing and what notes are in the chords that we're playing, we begin to internalize the layout of the notes on the guitar quite intuitively without very much special effort at all. No memorization is involved. Today we're going to look at some common chords and how we use a specific method of looking at our chords to help us learn where the notes are on the fretboard. So let's get into it. Let's start out with a very simple chord that's in Desafinato, which is the song I was playing at the beginning is the first section of Desafinato by Antonio Carlos Jobim. And one of the chords in that first section is the C7 chord, which we've seen many times before. Okay, so here we have on our screen a diagram of the C7 chord. And here we have a section of my worksheet that shows the scale degree layouts in the 5 chords of the CAGED system. The C7 that we're using in this particular case is built out of the C major chord shape from the CAGED system. And you can see on the screen the notes of the C major scale. So now when I look at the C chord in that context on my chord worksheet, I can fill in the numbers of the notes that I'm actually playing. So here's the C7, which we started with. And the scale degrees of this chord shape are 1 on the A string, 3 on the D string, flat 7 on the G string, and 1 on the B string. If I fill that in on my chord worksheet as I begin to learn the song, and then I keep that filled in worksheet on the music stand beside my music while I'm practicing the song, what happens is as I put my fingers down onto that C7 chord, and I begin to have the knowledge in my fingers and in my head of which note is under which finger. This is one of the sort of secret skills that all musicians need to build. And that is to, when you put your fingers on your instrument, you need to know what note you're holding down before you make a sound. This makes it possible for you to choose what sound you want to play before you play it. So at first, we're working in very gross terms or coarse terms. We are simply holding down chords and playing them. But what we ultimately want to do is be aware of which notes we're holding down on the fretboard, and this facilitates our being able to choose specific chords, specific variations, and becoming familiar with the sounds of those different chords and variations before we ever play them. The starting point of that is to know which notes we're holding down with our fingers every time we play a chord. Let's look at a couple more examples of this same process, okay? The song begins with an F major 7, which I play in this position. Okay, here's the next chord, F major 7. This is an E form chord. Okay, we've got 1 on the low E string, major 7 on the D, 3 on the G string, and 5 on the B string. Okay, so those 4 notes make up the F major 7. Now, when I play the F major 7, I start to have an awareness that I'm holding down the 1, the major 7, the 3, the 5. And I have that awareness, and the beautiful thing about learning that awareness is, later in the song when I'm playing an A major 7, I'm playing the exact same chord shape, but here. But the degree numbers of those notes do not change. It's the same chord structure, now in a different key. Now I'm playing in the key of A, but these note values have the same degree numbers. 1, flat 7, 3, 5. Only this time relative to A instead of the F that we were talking about a moment ago. Let's look at another example of a chord and learning how to understand that chord. The second chord in Desafinato is this chord we've spoken about before, 7 flat 5. On the On the 3rd fret, we're playing the G 7 flat 5. Of course, this is just a 7 flat 5. You can move anywhere. Okay? And so we've got the 1 on the E string, flat 7 on the D, 3 on the G string, and the flat 5 on the B string. And it has that slightly, the sound of this chord, to a large extent, defines a desaffinato, this out of tune kind of feeling, okay, which is what desaffinato means. So now we know that no matter where we play a 7 flat 5 chord, if we're using this particular shape, we know that those are the scale degrees. And by the way, in this particular case, we're looking at the scale degrees in the context of the G form chord, which this is. Okay, so and a general rule is if most of the notes in a chord fall on the left-hand side over here, then we consider that, with a root on the E string, we consider that to be a G form chord. But if most of the notes in the chord fall on the right-hand side of the root note on the E string, then we consider that to be an E form chord. Each of the chord forms is 1/2 of a butterfly pattern, and there's a wing on the left and a wing on the right. You don't really need to dig into that any more than this, except to wrap your head around the idea that these patterns are connected and they do share notes along that center line. Let's look at one last example of a chord shape. This again is a chord shape in the G form. However, it doesn't look like a G, and this is the chord A7 flat 9. So at the beginning of the first ending of the chorus of this, we go so that second chord, that's a 7 flat 9, and here's the root A here. It's the 7 flat 9, and we have the 1 on the E string. Again, this is a G form chord. 1 on the E string, 3 on the A string, flat 7 on the D string, and flat 9 on the G. So what we're talking about today is just how you can use the chords in your song that you're already learning. Just go ahead and learn your songs the way you already have, but introduce this additional single step of mapping your chords out. And by the way, if you want a copy of my chord worksheet that gives you space to write out both the chord shapes in a large format that's easy for you to visually remember, and that provides you with space to write in the degree number of each chord, which is an extremely valuable exercise, just send me an email and I'll send you a free copy of my chord worksheet. So, you're learning your song as you normally do. You write the chord down on my chord worksheet, okay? And we're not really too concerned with the note names other than making sure that we get the chord in the right place. Root on G if I'm playing a G chord, for example. And then what we do is we use the CAGED chord and scale map, which I will also send you a copy of if you request one at no cost. You can look up the degree numbers of the notes in your chord, and you will begin to become familiar with the idea, for example, that your A7 flat 9 is here. Okay? And that's really, really useful information. It begins to orient us to the neck of the guitar. But I strongly recommend begin by learning the degree numbers of the notes that are in your chords first. That's enough to begin with, and very often that's all you really need. We want to be careful to learn chord shapes in a way where the chords are movable. So we want to learn a 7 flat 9 chord like this, and I want to be able to play that in the A. I want to be able to play a G, in fact, later in this song. Or I want to be able to play a C. Okay? So this is an essential concept that we want to wrap our heads around, is that we don't want to learn 8,700 chords. We want to learn the 5 shapes of the CAGED pattern, and we want to learn the variations on those 5 movable shapes. And by studying them, focusing on the degree numbers, it keeps us oriented towards reusing just 5 shapes instead of having to learn a G7 flat 9, an A7 flat 9, a B7 flat 9, a C7 flat 9, all separately. We're not doing that. we're learning a 7 flat 9 voicing, and we're going to move that voicing all over the guitar. And it makes it less work. You get more results in less time, less hassle. Again, if you want the worksheets for this, just send me an email, bonner.harris@gmail.com. I'll send you a bunch of paperwork at no cost. If you're looking for more information about the caged patterns or about learning where the note locations on the neck are, there are videos here over my shoulders, and you can jump on one of those and learn to your heart's content. There's lots of stuff on the channel. Please subscribe. Come on back and visit me again soon.